Emerson Fittipaldi's Indy 500 1984 March 7C. Pretty remarkable stuff.
Here's the grid in full. Mark Isa from P1. Danny Baker alongside, then is Dale Katechis, then Davis, Simon and Schreibman occupying the first 3 rows of this grid for this Coppa Shell race. Cloud Ceneretti, then it's Larson Davies. Eric Marston goes from P10. Then we see Brad Horseman and Jeff Palermo then completing the next 3 rows through to P12. P13 for Lisa Clark, then it's Michael Watt, Kevin Milstein, Oscar Arroyo, and then Grilli and Rudolfo Lenzi then bringing up the rear in that particular page. And then it's David Varweg, Ted Giovannis, Lance Corley, Ian Campbell, and then Pisoni and Panavich as well, before we get to Oskoy and Langberg and Paraskoya and Palermo, Bildman and Habibi going from P30 on the grid. So it is a packed group of cars. Now, you would argue that this is a very long circuit, over 6 kilometers. However, what I have learned this weekend is that it gets very, very busy.
It does. I mean, you know, as things spread out just a little bit, right as you're on a fast lap, you're closing down on somebody, you can catch a little bit of traffic. You can find yourself racing in clumps of cars, and that means you have to be really up on your racecraft and pick your lines. We've seen some brilliant examples of that as this weekend has unfolded. I suspect we'll see more today. One other person to talk about, Lisa Clark, absolutely stunning race yesterday. Ended up in second place, 6th overall in the AM car. She was frustrated after qualifying. She only qualified 6th in AM, and you know, she said, I have to get the job done and get to the front. And I said, Lisa, after the overtakes you put on at Coda and then the drive you put on yesterday, you can do this.
Absolutely.
And she went, all right, I'm gonna go after it. And of course, she's got a great coach with John Miller, who I'm sure was telling her the exact same thing.
Yes, and she has the pace, doesn't she?
She does.
From a race strategic point of view, what we find with this brilliant mix of Shell and Shell Am drivers as well is you find that, you know, drivers can be mired in traffic, but they're out of class, and therefore that's when the head comes into use, isn't it? Because there's no point fighting with someone who is not in your class, because you could be fighting a completely futile battle. Yeah, you may get the honor of overtaking that car, but it might all go horribly wrong, and it makes no difference to you in terms of your class position.
And even if you're not caught up in an incident as you're trying to, you know, really feed your ego with that overall position, you can, if you're trying, even if you're successful, you can take a lot out of your tires.
Yes.
And that is a big, big issue here. Oh, that's the 151 of, no.
Is that the one? That's the triple
111
car.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the car of Habibi, isn't it?
Yep. And we saw on the grid that he was going to be starting at the back of the field. Apparently something happened after qualifying, and so if you make some change on the car, the rules call that you start at the back of the field from pit lane. So that must be what he's sitting there and getting ready to do. But as we were saying, caught in that overall battle, you know, you can hurt the tires, and then the person behind you in your class can run you down. Better to just let that overall guy go. Fight your race class battle. That's the championship you're in. You want those points.
Yes, all of a sudden it becomes a futile battle, as I mentioned earlier on. So Cam Habibi then having to go from the pit lane because the car was having to be worked on in the parc fermé conditions, which means that you're going to start right at the back of the pack, and you're going to have to start from the pit lane. We can see the safety car now leading the cars into this turn just off the back of the Ullman straight here, this turn 17, which I find absolutely fascinating, as you've explained to me how to try and diamond this turn and make it exactly right to give yourself a supreme run on the start-finish straight. We're about to go racing.
Can't wait. This field coming up. Mark Isa, the yellow Ferrari on the inside. Kenny Fendoff, triple winner. Danny Baker as we head to the start. There he goes.
So Isa then just got the measure of Danny Baker. The one that looked for me like he was really on a mission as well was Dale Katechis as they all head into turn number 1. Stand by. All those cars going in. And Baker staying with the outside line. And Isa runs quite wide. Does that open up the window of opportunity to Dale Katechis? He wasn't quite close enough to be able to do so, but he has put himself ahead of Baker.
Yeah, Baker floated wide, and that is opening up the opportunity as well for Brian Simon to stick his nose inside. Looks like he may have gone through on Baker. Baker just could not get that car turned down to the apex a little bit, left a big opening, and there he is. The 122 slices through Brian Simon all the way up from the 6th spot on the grid.
So you can see here how Katechis is really going to push Isa all the way, having got to... Oh, and we have a bit of contact there, and somebody is off. Who is that?
That is Schreibman, I think. He came from a ways back, saw an opportunity to try and get down the inside of Baker.
That's Ceneretti.
That is Ceneretti.
So there was my commentator's tip for the top then. That was a mistake, wasn't it? Senoretti, unfortunately, dropping down. He's just lost out to Jeff Palermo as well. Whether any damage has been inflicted upon that 151 car and that running off. There was, we heard contact rather than saw it, didn't we? So Mark Issa is leading from Dale Katechis, as you can see, in that all-blue car. And those two are really stretching their legs now ahead of P3, 4, 5. And Danny Baker trying to come back now, having lost out on a couple of places right in the early stages of this race.
Yeah, Brian Davis, the pole sitter in the AM category, in the number 128 from Ferrari of Palm Beach, has slipped back a spot as well. And I think what may have caught out Senoretti, I think Schreibman, and they both run for, Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale for Senoretti, and I think Schreibman tried to move, and I think Senoretti got caught up in it and maybe had to take evasive. That's why he's dropped back just a little bit. But here we go. He said exactly what he wanted to have happen. And, boy, big opportunity there as well as Katechis filled that gap. And so for Issa, who's in the points battle with Danny Baker, things are looking pretty good. But it's early.
It is first lap to be put in the book then as the cars cross the timing line now. This is the Coppa Shell race, the mix of Shell and AM drivers near. You can see Danny Baker on the outside here. It's going to become the outside of turn number 1. Will he quickly switch and try and get underneath the 122 car? Well, he wasn't close enough to be able to do that. So Issa leading from Katechis, then it's Simon Baker and Davis with Schreibman P6 and Rudolfo Lenzi is P7. And here comes Danny Baker now.
Beautiful move. You would think, no, did he overshoot the corner? Absolutely not. He had it under control, got through, then put the car but now carries way too much speed into 5.
Now that has meant that he's pirouetted round. He's on the loose stuff. He's managed to get the car going again. And is he going to be able to? He's got all this traffic to go through before he can safely rejoin the track. Danny Baker is going to go from that P3 position to the very, very back of the pack, Greg.
Oh, a triple winner to start the season off. And now, as you said, the entire field going by. And for Mark Issa, in terms of the points and perhaps pressure during the race, just received a huge gift. Of course, Katechis, we know he is very racy indeed. Here's Simon now in the bright red number 122. That's the Collie Ferrari of Detroit entry. And then the 128 of leader in the AM category, Brian Davis.
Now, I was saying, Brian Davis here, he doesn't need to get past this 122 car, but he's completely ignoring everything I'm saying, wise fellow. And he's in this race and he's thinking, no, I'm going to come past. Look at him. He was switch of direction there as we get a replay here of, as you said, you called it exactly right. He just carried too much speed, didn't he?
Yeah, I think what happened, he made that pass into 3, so he exited tighter than usual, got him off of his rhythm a little bit, and the car went wide and pivoted around when he got into turn 5. That's a learning experience. Costly one, certainly, but a learning experience. Looks like another moment here for the number 151 of Senoretti, whose race has just not gone well here in the opening few laps.
No, really been compromised, hasn't it? Unfortunately, he has gone backwards. So Cloud Senoretti with a huge amount of work to do, and of course the short, sharp races from the Ferrari Challenge, and looks like he's oh, we've got another one to the very right side of your picture there, just off onto the grass, as we see the 122 car of Simon there, who's running in P3 at the moment, about to cross the timing line. So Dale Katechis, that means Davis has got past Simon, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
We said that he won't do that because he's in a different class. To heck he won't, he's done it.
But you know, there is a strategy play there. If his car was right and he could do that without taking much out of the tires, it gives him even more of a buffer now back to Schreibman and Rudolfo Lenzi.
Yes.
And Lenzi has come from way back, qualified 8th in the AM category.
He's made up 12 places.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
Well, he's had people in front of him, you know, throw cars off the road, but he also, only a couple, he had to make up those other 5 spots on his own. That showing, you know what we saw at Circuit of the Americas, Lenzi is a decisive overtaker. And when he makes the move, it's going to happen. And he's put it to good use here in the early goings here of this second race.
At the back of this pack, you've got Larson in the yellow car, then it's Jeff Palermo in the all-silver number 113 machine. They're fighting over that P7 and P8 in the race overall. They're both gentlemen racers. Jeff Palermo on the inside now. Well, in fairness to the car of Rudolfo Lenzi, he saw him there and he gave room, didn't he? But has not compromised the position yet.
Yeah, that was a very smart move because you know, he certainly could have fought that and said, no, you're, you know, that way over optimistic, and it was. but it can still end in tears. And you saw him, he just opened the wheel up, said, I'd rather not get taken out, I'd rather lose a spot and go for the fight now. It was a wise choice. And of course, Larson right there as well on that bright yellow Ron Tonkin Gran Turismo Ferrari, watching this unfold here.
So you have Issa and Katechis P1 and P2 in the Trophy Open, in the Coppa Shell drivers class, and then P1 is Brian Davis and P2 Jay Schreibman in terms of the AM drivers. This fantastic drone shot, as you can see them coming off the turn and onto this longer straight, the Ullman straight, as they head in towards this turn number 17. Oh,
look at Palermo there in the silver car, thinking about it, looked inside, still not there. Keeping it way down, and what he's trying to do is to see if he can get the 133 of Lenzi to run a little wide, and Lenzi said, nope, that's the fast line around here anyway. I'm just going to keep my foot planted, and it worked. You
could almost see Palermo was losing speed because of his tightness around that turn.
Yep, just pinching that radius down, and you end up scrubbing speed. You need to open the radius up, and the thing is that if you do that in 17 and you pinch it down, then you lose a lot of speed all the way down that front straight, all the way to a very fast turn one.
Well, Schreibman has got past the 122 car here of Simon. So Schreibman, as you said, is on a mission, although Simon there lost the back end of the car as well. So that's slowed him up. So that's Schreibman put himself into P4 in the race overall.
Well, we know Schreibman's a great qualifier. He needs to throw down. Whoa, coming from way back is Palermo and Lenzi, returning the favor, and he puts that car exactly where he needed to on the exit and makes it stick.
So Jeff Palermo then with a high move and brave move, but it worked. So that switch position then, he puts himself ahead of Rudolfo Lenzi, who now, of course, for company, has got the all-yellow machine.
Behind them, take a look at this battle. Lisa Clark starting to look at and try and figure out a way by Eric Marsden, the 148 and the 127, the two Scuderia Corsa cars. So you know they're going to be respectful when they try and race. They're coming from the same team here.
So there he is, Lisa Clark. Sent a picture right now in that number 127 car. Ahead of her, as Greg has said, it's Eric Marston then in the 148 machine. And he shared our table at lunchtime, and it's always good to talk to these drivers and have a catch up with them. And
behind Lisa is Brian Horseman in the foreign cars Italia number 105. That red Ferrari with the black stripe right down the center and the black roof line.
Lisa Clark, very, very impressive. Love the livery on that 127 car. She makes her way down the back of the paddock now. You can see the paddock area to the right-hand side of your picture.
And up front, Larson making a move on Lenzi.
So here comes Larson then. He's got this job done, hasn't he?
They hang on to it. Yep. And you can see Larson's car nowhere near as pogoing, because his line was the one through the bumps, and you can see Lenzi trying to tighten that up a little bit. Look for it. Palermo, boy, man on the move.
Palermo, he's on a mission this afternoon, isn't he?
Nice by Brian Simon in the red number 122. Had to shallow up his exit of one to Simon carry enough speed.
And just if you consider how far up the road Schreibman has got, now he's got past that Simon car. If Palermo is able to do the same, the leader, incidentally, Mark Issa, has built a margin of some 3.3 seconds over Dale Katechis.
And the problem for Schreibman, who you're just talking about, you can see this is Schreibman, the margin he's built. But when he was stuck behind all of those other cars, he lost about 5 seconds to Davis up front, who's leading class. Ooh, from way back came the 115, realized, nope, that's not quite going to work. Or the 105 of Horseman, and checked up a little bit. Better again to avoid the contact.
Oh, that could so easily have been damaged, couldn't it? But well done to Bradley Horseman for dialing out of that, because on the inside of Lisa Clark there, that was never going to work. Lisa Clark continuing to pounce on the back of Eric Marston, though, that's for sure.
Yep, there is Horseman, and behind them, you can see as we watch Lisa, there's Horseman. Then that blue and white car, that's Davies, who we talked about earlier, the Wide World Ferrari. He's gone around the 138 Scuderia Cava Ferrari of San Diego entry of Kevin Milstein, and now is trying to join this group of AM competitors, but he's got a little ground to make up. This is a stout little battle here.
It is. Great little battle going on, isn't it? So as we watch these cars then, this is whichever way you look throughout the pack at the moment, there's plenty going on. And whilst all this is going on, rubbing his hands with invisible soap is Mark Isa, who's able to escape up the road in that P1 position ahead of Dale Katechis, who incidentally has got about the same margin over Davis and Schreibman as well. So up front, they're really spread out, which is why it's brilliant that we're watching these battles further on down the order.
Absolutely, and I think Davies is going to be frustrated. We talked about how he qualified 10th yesterday, 3rd today in the Shell Am class. I think when we had that moment early with Centeretti, I think he had to check up and got freight trained a little bit.
Yes.
Now has to fight his way back up through the pack as he sits 7th in the Coppa Shell Am right now.
Really, it's distraught for a driver who not involved in the battle yourself, but actually you get caught out, and by taking evasive action, you end up losing places. So Lisa Clark now, she's in this terrible position where she's having to defend and try and attack at the same time, although that's a really interesting line there that was taken by Brad Horseman. Not the best one, is it?
No, he floated a little bit wide, and what happens there when you get wide at your turn in, it's tough to get the car back down to the apex. And so the only thing you can do is you have to breathe, because if you lift, you're going to get all that weight transferred to the nose. The back end's going to come around. So you've got to gently breathe out of it. He did a nice job of that, but the minute you breathe, you are now losing forward drive and speed. And you can see now that there's that little bit of breathing room once again for Lisa Clark, but she's proving to be, as always, Shay, racing.
Very much so. And guys, she was even working with her coach, John Miller, before the start of the race, trying to figure out a better line through turn 7. That's where Chateau Elan used to be. Now it is called Hotel 7, so it's easy enough to identify on the track. But she was trying to get a different line to shoot off of the corner better, to try and carry more speed through the backside of the course. So keep an eye. That might just be her passing opportunity to try and get around Eric Marston.
Well, let's see if indeed she does carry that out. Interesting, studying things with a coach right up to the very last minute, having to get into the car. But for the moment, Eric Marston is able to show Lisa Clark a clean pair of heels. But Lisa might be playing a smart game here, just stepping back, letting the car and the brakes cool just a little bit before she goes for another Viper-like attack on the car of Eric Marston ahead.
Well, you bring up a good point. It's warm today, very warm, and it's also very humid. And what that means is that heat doesn't dissipate easily in the humidity. You're stuck right up behind another car for a while. You can start to have the temps go up in your car, and when the temperatures go up enough, the cars tend to lose a little bit of power. And I think Lisa's going to be attacked here by Horseman. He got a great run out of a hugely wide line
massive.
Here. Whoa.
So you picked that up, that Bradley Horseman was on the inside of Lisa Clark going into that turn. As we watch this now, that
was Larson, who was involved with Lenzi, who went way wide.
Well, sure enough, I think Horseman has got past Lisa Clark, so it's Horseman now on the back of Marston. Here comes Lisa Clark coming back, though.
That will get the attention of the stewards. I'm not sure that Horseman was actually trying to block Lisa. I think he thought he had a shot at getting by Simon up front and moved over because the reaction. Oh, and a big wiggle. Nice save.
That was, but of course that's meant that the 1-2-2 car is somewhat slower, so Simon is going to get called out here by Eric Marston. And also here comes Bradley Horseman, who's really having to go down the inside. Of course, Marston's on the outside, therefore there's nothing he can do. He has to let him go, otherwise there would have been a collision.
And Horseman, what a move. He controlled that. He came from way, way back, but got it straight line. Good solid braking, pivoted the car, exited right where a counterpunch move would happen. That's a 2-car pass into the hairpin. That's good stuff.
Yes, 3 passes in the space of a third of the track distance. So brilliant stuff. He's really, really driving well indeed. So Lisa Clark will feel hard done by there, and will try and come back at this. But in the meantime, in the target sights, if you like, of the 105 car, is the cars that are much further ahead than they were just the space of half a lap or so ago.
And one of the ways to tell what class is out there, look at the car that Lisa's chasing. It's got the yellow banner across the top of the windshield. That means it's the Coppa Shell class. If it's a silver, essentially, then that means it is one of the Coppa Shell Am category cars. So you can see right now Lisa is having a battle with a car that's out of category. We drop back just a little bit, and there is the Clemson Tiger delivering 150 of Michael Watt, as he is mounting a big attack on the back of Oscar Arroyo in the Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale entry, the white Ferrari.
So the cars make their way down the back straight here at this Sebring circuit, the Ullman straight then, heading into this turn now. And Oscar Arroyo there in the 190 car, the Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale, all-white machine. Michael Watt hanging on the outside there, getting so close to the wall on the exit of that turn.
Huge. He carried a lot of speed, and part of the issue was the 138 of Kevin Milstein, who was right in front of them in the Scuderia Cava Ferrari of San Diego entry. Just seemed relatively slow all the way through 17, and those guys actually were taking a little bit of an evasive line, I think, at that point, and it worked out for Watt because he carried a lot of speed through the corner as a result.
I just called at the back of that picture Danny Baker. Look, he's trying to come back at all these cars now following his excursion earlier on in this race, so he's one to keep an eye on. We've got, what have we got, some 13.5 minutes of this race still to run. The race being led by Mark Issa by some 3 seconds over Dale Katechis. The leader in the AMS is Brian Davis. Here comes Lisa Clark.
Way down to the inside, but she just came from a little bit too far back, and Brian Simon was aware of it and realized she wasn't quite there and said, well, nope, that's still my corner, turned across and took the line. Quick note on Baker, he is fighting now to get up into the top 20 of this big 30-car field. He has fast lap in the race at a 2-minute 9.755 for the category, so at least he's got that point. And remember, you've got to get into the top 10 if you want to score more than 1 point, and Lisa's off.
Now, is that a deflating tire, or was that just a mistake?
Ooh!
And makes contact with the tire barriers. So Lisa Clark then into the tire barriers. And I'm sure we'll get a replay of exactly how that... I just began to wonder whether there was a reason she was offline there, whether that tire was deflating. Not sure.
Yep. Yeah, and once she got offline, as you can see, you're on the grass, which doesn't offer much grip. She hit that one crossover road, which you would hope you could get the brakes and really slow you down, but she skipped almost over it. There was just nothing she could do. She was completely along for the ride at that point. So the question remains now, are we going to do full course? And you have to.
Yes.
Where she's sitting, especially with contact like that, you've got to get the removal vehicles out there to clear that incident. So all these big margins are evaporating, and you know, you hate to see it happen at the expense of one of your competitors, but for Jay Schreibman in particular, he had almost a 20-second deficit to Davis up front. That's going away. Yeah.
Well, full course yellow then for the recovery of the Lisa Clark car. And Issa is another one that's going to lose out, of course, right at the front of the pack. He had a 3-second plus lead over Dale Katechis. I have to say, I think Issa has had the pace all the way along. And going into this race, I think both of us have said, you know, he'd got the bit between his teeth in qualifying. We could sense that, couldn't we? And he had a torrid time of it yesterday, and therefore wants to make up for that yesterday. Okay, Lisa Clark, the update. Here is Shay.
She's okay, guys. She's talking on the radio to her crew. Very frustrated tone to her voice, as you can expect, but the most important thing, she will race again.
That's good news indeed. Yeah, I can understand the frustration. She was in the middle of some great battling, and every time she would go to make a move, somebody else would make a move, and it would sort of you know, disrupt her rhythm a little bit. She'd have to lay back, and then somebody else would come knifing through, and every time she would you know, think, okay, I can pick something up here, she'd end up losing a couple of spots, and that can frustrate you, no question.
So now, in this critical moment, when we're in this full course yellow then, it's now that the engineers and the teams will be talking to their drivers as we get a replay here. Lisa just was on the grass, wasn't she? I don't think there is a deflating tire at all. And as you say, she just skipped across that escape road and made contact with the tire barriers. But the great news is that Lisa is absolutely fine. Been talking on the radio, somewhat frustrated, but she had probably been involved in as many battles during the course of the first half of this race as anybody.
Well, yeah, and it was interesting because where she ran wide over there, she just was wide around, and I don't know whether she thought the car in front of her had checked up a little bit and she wanted to skip out and try and drive around, but she just had a little bit too much pace at that moment. She doesn't make those mistakes very often at all, so I wonder if it wasn't the car in front of her, something changed and she was trying to avoid it, but unfortunately, regardless, unfortunately she ended up in the barriers. Good news is she's fine.
So it's at this moment then, as I was saying, well, the teams will be communicating with their drivers, saying exactly how they should adopt themselves and use this full course yellow to keep everything under control, and also in terms of temperament as well as the car as well. Because of course, when it comes to restarting this race, it's going to be a dash for cash almost, isn't it, to the checkered flag? And with all those evaporated gaps that you said that at various points we had in very critical positions here, races can be won or lost.
Well, you talked about it, didn't you? That even though this is a 3¼ mile length track with 30 cars on it, it can be very busy with traffic. And we have seen these big clumps of cars, and that's where racecraft is everything. And there's a look at, just to point that out, at the 121 of Danny Baker. This caution helps him out with the pace he's had. If there's enough time when it goes back to green, it could give him the opportunity to move up a few spots. And if he, as I said, you've got to be 9th or better to score more than 1 point.
Yeah.
So that's something he's going to be thinking about. But keep in mind here, it's hot out, but even so, the heat that these tires will have when they're racing at full song, when you're even under a hot day like this, when you're under caution, they cool. And when we go back to green, it's going to be like a start of the race, and you've got to be mindful of, okay, the tires are not going to be quite right for a lap or so, and hopefully you can catch somebody that makes a little mistake and make a pass, but you've got to avoid making the mistakes yourself.
Yes. And of course, going back to what you were saying earlier, all these cars are going to be bunched up together now. Tyres not up to temperature, despite the heat, as you say. And when they're not racing, they're not up to operating temperature. Brakes as well. And therefore, all of a sudden, these cars and these drivers could become very vulnerable.
They could, and and it's awfully tough sometimes to have the self-discipline to ignore that, the angel and devil on your shoulder, and the devil saying you can pick up 5 spots going into the inside of 1 or down into the hairpin in 7.
Yeah.
And if you fall prey to that,
yes,
you can end up involved in a big incident. So you've got to listen to the good angel on the other side that say no, do it one at a time. And be smart about it. And of course, let's not forget, these drivers in these cars have been racing hard for 20 minutes, and near 90-degree temperature with stultifying humidity takes a lot out of them too.
So Danny Baker then, the one that could take advantage of this. Here is Shay.
Or not, because they're not entirely sure how much life he has left in his tires, gentlemen. He has been pushing like hard to try and get those places back, and they're a little bit concerned as to how much he has taken out of his Pirellis trying to gain back positions. They're a little bit more concerned about the cars behind, and is he going to be a sitting duck on the restart?
That's a very good point, Shay.
Yes,
he could be vulnerable, actually. And reinforcing that, we know how hard he's pushed. The tyres, of course, have been through several cycles, including a dirt cycle when he went off the track, which caused him to be completely out of position relative to where we think he should be.
And so, yeah, I mean, he's going to have to be very, very track aware, is what they say. Know who's behind you, what they're going to be doing, especially if he does find an opportunity to attack. Because the last thing you want to do is make it an attempt, have it go wrong, and not wreck, but just have it go wrong, lose a bunch of momentum, and have 2 more cars go by you. That's where racing in these packs becomes a very tricky deal, and track awareness and racecraft is what it's about, and that's what they're learning. That's why we're talking about Coppa Shell drivers and Coppa Shell Am drivers, a little bit less experienced than the guys running Trofeo Pirelli, and this is where you learn that racecraft.
You can see at the top right-hand side of your picture there that the recovery is ongoing, and Lisa Clark's car is being pulled out of the tyre barriers now. What I will say is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of time for anyone to have an opportunity here, Greg, because we're at 5 3/4 minutes left in terms of racing. I wouldn't be altogether surprised if this didn't finish behind the safety car. Yeah,
it's certainly a possibility. And the thing is, you could say, well, slow the safety car down and give it time, but it doesn't matter because it's a clock, it's a time event. The reason you would slow the safety car down is if you thought there was opportunity to avoid doing another lap under yellow and eating up more time. But the problem is we saw her car was just going up onto the tilt bed. And so it's a matter of the stewards, along with the RV crews or the EV crews here, that are talking about it, going, if we go green, can you get it done? And as you can see, Todd Snyder had said, turn 16, the last turn leading onto the Ullman Straight here, he said, that's my last ditch moment to be able to turn those lights off. Lights are on going into 17. We have another lap of caution.
Another consideration with your huge experience here at Sebring, obviously what she's done, she's compressed those tyres in the tyre wall. Will they want to repair that barrier before we go back to racing?
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't move the barrier behind the wall, then they could just quickly shove those tires back into position. We should be good. But you see, white flag has come out. So they have now determined if it's a white flag with a yellow, we are going to finish under caution. And that's where the stewards, again, consulting with the EV crews on site, are saying, yeah, there's no way we can get this cleaned up in time with only now 4 minutes, 20 seconds left in this race. So it's unfortunate. There was some opportunity here. But I'll tell you, for Marquisa, there's no question that he deserved this win, even if it's under caution, with the pace we've seen from him from qualifying this morning and his execution in the race today.
Yes, no, I think you're absolutely right. I would agree with that. Of course, you never want to see a race finish in this way, but sometimes it happens. The most important thing is, Lisa, is absolutely okay following those barriers, and we're grateful to Shea for giving us the update very, very quickly on that as we look at the 1-2-4 car there of Deborah Palermo, wife of Jeff, whose car we could just see momentarily, the 113 car. There it is, center screen now, the all-silver car. Interesting how husband and wife don't opt for the same color scheme.
Exactly. I think, they're saying, well, a little bit of independence could be a good thing here when you go racing. Obviously, the guy who might be a little frustrated here, although they had talked about, was he going to have anything to be able to throw at it, would be Danny Baker. I think a guy who would love to have raced it to the finish, especially with closing things up to see if he had any pace to be able to go after Brian Davis. But after his run of bad luck here, I think Jay Schreibman will end up second in the AM category, and did that with a great qualifying run again this morning and some heads-up driving here this afternoon. And I think after that bad luck, he'll go, okay, I'll take it. It's a second. I'd rather race for it, but hey, I needed this.
This is going to be Jeff Palermo's first podium of the season, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
In the end.
Yes, it is. He was really, really on it in this race. Impressive to see for Palermo in that Ferrari of San Francisco entry.
No, I can't.
And just wanted to confirm that, he's had a 5th and a 4th. So, well, the way it's going, he'll have a win within the next 2 races because he's 5th, 4th, 3rd.
Yep. Yeah.
So in that Hublot safety car, being able to lead him around here. There is a look at Marquisa. Great ride in that Ferrari of Atlanta entry all day today. And for Brian Davis, his streak continues. He gets, I believe, his 4th win in 4 races.
Yes. So then the race going to finish under this full course yellow conditions, which is never what we want to see. However, it just means that the recovery crew, they announced fairly early on that with the time that was left on the clock, as Greg has so rightly identified, that we have a clock here. It's not a number of laps, it is a duration, and therefore it was never going to be able to get that recovery sorted out and for us to be able to go back to race conditions with the amount of time that was left on the clock. As you can see, the clock is continuing to count down, just under a minute and a half left to run in this race.
And obviously they'll come by and pick up the checkered flag with some time left on the clock. But again, the consideration was the amount of time to get the incident completely cleared. It was just going to be inadequate for the time remaining. And there you see it. Checkered flag comes out. So Mark Issa comes through, and just a remarkable qualifying run earlier. And he comes home. He's been fast this season, a couple of seconds, and then had that issue yesterday. But his first win, he'll be delighted with that.
Yes. You wouldn't have bet against it, would you,
No.
have the race gone full distance? Because just as we both said, you know, he just looked really, really determined, didn't he?
He did. He did. And Katechis, another real solid finish for him. He'll be delighted with that. He had a 3rd at the opening round at Circuit of the Americas, then qualified 2nd, but ended up 10th in the 2nd round at COTA. That hurt him a little bit in the points. This is going to just promote him right back into that points chase, and he certainly deserves to be there. Solid amount of talent. And then Palermo, as you said, that first podium in the Coppa Shell category, so congrats to him.
Brian Davis, a remarkable run of success that Brian Davis has had. 4 wins in a row in that number 128 car that we saw center screen just a few moments ago. What a weekend he's had here in Sebring.
Yeah, it's been very impressive. And interestingly here, you look, Davis gets that 4th straight win. Schreibman comes back and puts that car up onto the podium once again with a very solid run, and he'll be enjoying that. But how about Brian Horseman in the Foreign Cars Italia entry that finds himself up on his first podium after a 9th in the first round at Coda, then a problem and couldn't even run the second race. 6th yesterday, and you started to see yesterday, it's like, all right, now he's in the flow. He knows what he can do, and he was racy today. Remember how far up the pack he came. That double pass that he executed,
yes.
Pretty impressive stuff. And so Horseman, I think, will be absolutely delighted with how things unfolded today, considering his qualifying run. He started 5th in the AM category, but was back in the 11th overall spot and just raced his way through the field.
So the cars making their way back then, the Coppa Shell race done and dusted. We can still hear in the background the recovery operation for the stricken Lisa Clark car.
Yes.
And so in this searing heat then, the cars will be led back into the paddock. And the race completed with Mark Issa winning for the Shell drivers, and Brad Davis winning for the AM drivers.
For Mark Issa, last time through the Le Mans curve and onto the Ullman Straight as he is enjoying this victory lap, albeit behind the pace car. It's not always the way you want to have it done, as we've said, but well earned indeed, in considering that when he came into the weekend, he was 8 points off of Danny Baker, lost a little bit more ground with Baker's win yesterday and that big off that he had, the contact as a result with Katetchis. But now with Baker struggling outside of the points, save for a fast lap point, that has changed it. Well, actually, it's Katetchis right before that caution came out, turned to 2:09.6. It takes that away.
Yeah.
So for Danny Baker, with his negative points haul today, essentially, Issa is right back in it. But this is going to be a fascinating way to see this unfold. Centeretti in the hit in the hunt, certainly, and Jeff Palermo with that podium came in 4th in the points. This is going to really compress here.
What it just proves is that with the Ferrari Challenge North America, the old expression is not over until the fat lady sings. I mean, you can never predict, can you? You know, you think, you can take a look at the form guide and you can think, yeah, we know these people are quick and this and that, but, you know, things can happen in a race, can't they? As we've seen today, there's been a number of drivers, haven't there, that have probably been in places that we would not have expected to see them in.
Exactly, and that's why they hold the races.
Yeah, of course.
You know, otherwise you just look at qualifying and go, all right, that's good. You know, time attack, but it's the racing, it's the racecraft, the ability to manage the car, manage the tires, manage the temperature, and execute in the thick of some very heavy traffic. That's what makes these races so exciting and compelling. And again, you're driving a Ferrari 488. Doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
Listen to Mark. He
yeah,
says he gets
he's
out of the car.
delighted and well earned. I remember after qualifying, when Shea said that nice, clean, nobody in front of you into turn one, it doesn't matter. He said, I'm going to race it wherever we are. Well, he raced it beautifully. You think he's pumped?
I think so. I think so. What a fantastic reaction.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely delightful. And Shea, you're right down amidst the energy.
Good luck with it.
Yeah, right in the middle of all this energy. Don't know what to do with it, do you, Marquise?
Just bottle it right back up and just be poised and normal. Actually, this is amazing. I feel so good. I was tired. I hope 127's okay.
She is.
Okay, that's wonderful news. And now back to this news. This was a great race. Everybody played the way we were supposed to, but it was all right here. Faster, faster means focus more. That's it.
You weren't a little bit lonely out there so far in the lead?
You know, on the radio, they're telling me that he's getting closer, so I just keep driving harder and harder and hitting my points. So it's hard to get lonely when you can't think about anything but when's the next time I got to hit the brake.
Well, and now you get to think about when's the next time you get to drink some champagne, and that's going to be very soon. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Awesome. Woo!
That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's why you race. You know, you get out there and you have those intense battles, and another winner, Shea.
Yeah, Brian Davis, another winner, although you're very familiar with this whole procedure and all that. Another day, another race win, another pole position. Things just going your way.
It's gone really, really well. Great preparation. We were here last week, and we've got a great team, great coach, great preparation. It's been terrific, and the competition has been amazing. I hope you got to watch some of it. It was incredible.
Now, you also looked a little bit lonely out there running around, third position overall. Were you just hitting your marks same as Mark was doing?
I was trying to hit my marks. The track went away as we expected to get. It was a little hot out there. Obviously, there was a little bit of contact in front of me, and that moved the cycle up a little bit. And but overall, it was a great day.
Hey, it's a beautiful day when you get to win a race in a Ferrari. So good luck keeping the streak alive at Laguna Seca.
Thank you very much.
So Mark Issa then and Brian Davis that we hear from, two very, very successful drivers. Just reflecting, thinking, what does Danny Baker have to do now to pull himself back from this? Because going to Laguna Seca, you know, he'd had such a streak, such a run of success, hadn't he, that all of a sudden that confidence has been dented.
It has just a little bit, but I think he looks at what he was able to do. 3 wins before he made that one critical mistake.
Sure.
That's part of the learning process, and he knows he's got the pace. As you take a look at those results, he can come back through this.
Issa, Katechis, Palermo, the 1, 2, 3, ahead of Larson, Simon, Milstein, Watt, Arroyo, Varvig, and Sanaretti. Then the Shell classification, as you can see on screen, with Danny Baker. Look at that, a lowly P11, 1 place away from the points. Penovich and Perescoia and Lance Corley rounding out the 14 Shell drivers in terms of the classification there.
And that'll frustrate him that right at the end, Katechis took away that fast lap and that point.
Yes. Here are the AM classification then. Davis then taking yet another win. Jay Schreibman, P2. Then it was Bradley Horseman, P3. Eric Marston just off the podium with a P4. Then it was Davis, Lenchi, Grilly, Campbell, Giovannis, and Osque rounding out the top 10 in the AMs with Pisern and Palermo. Langberg, Eileen Bildman, P14. Then it was Kenna Beebe, and Lisa Clark, of course, made contact with the tyre barriers, but she is perfectly okay, which says something about the integral safety of the Ferrari 488 Challenge car.
It absolutely does, and that's the kind of thing that gives drivers confidence, is knowing that if something goes wrong, I will be well protected here. And here's a look at it. I mean, Baker had that big lead after yesterday. It's not so big now.
No, just down to 7 points, 65 playing 58 there with Dale. Katechis still in with 46. Then it's Palermo, Sanaretti, Milstein, Larson, Arroyo, Simon, and Michael Watt, the top 10 places in the Drivers' Championship with regards to the Shell drivers. And there you can see the points all the way from 11, joint 11, with Penovich and Corley down to P14.
And, of course, in the Coppa Shell Am category, those points should be a little bit more strung out because of Brian Davis's remarkable run of 4 wins. And the thing is, everybody behind him, right? As you take a look at Marston, 44 points back. Another 10 back is Johnny Grilli, then Lisa Clark with her off. But you look at it, Schreibman has had great race, bad race, great race, bad race. Horseman, great race today, but has had some problems early. There's all that churn behind Davis, and all that means is that he just keeps building that margin up.
Yes, that consistency and consistently quick. You know, I mean, Davis is banking everything that he possibly can. You know, every single point that is available, he wants to have it. And that means that the Drivers' Championship looking very good for him. And there we can see from 10 through until 14 where the points are scored out there with Mark Davis, Joe Sposado, Osque, Deborah Palermo, Eileen Bildman, and the others there as well.
I'll tell you, for these Coppa Shell drivers, this has been an interesting experience running at Sebring International Raceway. And, of course, that's part of the charm of this place, is its character, its challenges, and it's an immense learning experience. And what you take here now, you can apply anywhere.
So the Trofeo Pirelli Race 2 comes up at 1:50 p.m. Please make sure you can join us for that if you can.
Then you take a look at the highlights here. Issa from the pole. Now watch Baker. He gets there right there. Didn't get it turned, and now he is struggling to get it turned back down. He's off at a little bit of the slippier area of the track, and here comes the blue Ferrari of Katechis right up the inside. And as Baker tried to make the turn in, up inside of him comes Brian Simon. And they run side by side through the exit of 3, 4, and then Baker slots back in. But then, next lap, he had just done the pass going into turn 3, but it got him in a little different line and got him wide into 5. Back end snapped around, and off he went. And that was costly. Palermo in the silver Ferrari, a big charge up to the pack there, going around the 133 of Lenzi. And those two were going to go at it for a while. Then Palermo, big move to the inside, down into turn 1, and that puts him right around Brian Simon. Seriously, Palermo was the man on the move in the early going. This group was a fascinating battle for the entirety of the race. Big wiggle right there, but a big save Didn't lose too much as a result, but I think that was because Simon had been pressured so much and passed so much, he was trying to carry it. And here's where Lisa Clark was just wide, and I'm not sure exactly what precipitated it, but the one piece of ground which she could brake on, she just skipped right over that piece of pavement. But that was the good news. You saw her crawling out, frustrated to be sure, but otherwise okay. And the checkers came out, and Isa getting the win.
And you can sense how happy Isa and Davis were.